I'll give you a little intro on NX for those of you that are from the potential the Vivotek side. So NX is a video-driven platform focused on security. Our main core principles at NX are to make things a lot more usable. A lot of the platforms out there first developed this system were kind of overly complex and cumbersome to use, and so we've got professional UX design and UI design. Really built a system that was a lot more intuitive, which means people can use it a lot easier, like kind of any kind of consumer level software versus kind of professional level software. It takes a long time to learn, while retaining all the feature sets, all the advanced feature sets that you would get from those softwares. On top of that, the speed of the system, we've really worked on how we can deliver video and kind of megapixel video in a more usable way in terms of the speed. You're not like waiting for video to load a lot. And then the last kind of one of our three core principles is the extensibility, so the ability to integrate with anything, create custom solutions, and install on pretty much anything as well. So it's a little bit different take of a VMS. There's a lot of kind of unique features within it. So if for those of you who might not know it very well, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm more than happy to set up a demonstration of the software, but today we're more looking at the educational side. So we're more looking at IP cameras, how they work, what the components are, and exactly when to use the right certain IP cameras in certain scenarios, and where we go in the future. So on that note, we have Maxim from Vivotek, who did a great presentation this morning, I have to say. It was really informative, and we had some good questions come through. So Maxim, I'll hand it over to you. And if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to use the Q&A on the bottom or the chat and ask whenever you want, or they'll probably get answered towards the end of the presentation. We'll have an open discussion about some of the questions he's asked. And we'll also mention some of the questions that were asked this morning, just for everyone as well. So Maxim, if you want to take over.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, sorry. So my name is Maxime. I'm pre-sales for Vivotek, based in Paris. And today, so on this webinar, we are going to talk about how to choose correctly the camera, the video surveillance camera. So maybe a quick introduction to Vivotek. We are IP video surveillance manufacturer, as we have a production line based in Taiwan. And we do manufacture IP video surveillance product, from the camera to the network, for example, the switch, to the recorders. So it's with this this experience, this knowledge of the market, that we are going today to explain to you a bit how what is the process and what are the key things for choosing the right camera. A little bit of as an introduction about our partnership with NX. As we have co-worked together on several projects. One I want to highlight is Koh Samui Smart City, as in Thailand, as the island has to equip, due to tourism, the infrastructure with more than 1,000 cameras, 4K cameras. And this has been done thanks to Vivotek and NX working together to centralize everything after to the command center. And this project is to highlight a bit what we are going to see after, as the choice of the camera is very important. As for this project, for example, the resolution and the form factor were key, but you need to take into account that a video surveillance system is a system, which means that there is not only the camera, but also everything behind, including the software. And as we will see later, this is very important, that the communication between both of them works perfectly. So for this webinar, we are going through three main points. The first one will be how to choose the right camera form factor. We're going to see the different form factors in the market and the different advantages. Then we'll go more on the technologies when we have chosen this form factor, or what we need to consider to be sure that the product, the camera that we choose, is indeed the correct one and is adapted to the environment where we install it. And to conclude, a little glance at the future trends of the video surveillance market. And we'll finish by a Q&A session where you can ask all your questions. So first thing off is The camera. The first things to choose will be the form factors. Indeed, a camera has diverse components. So what we need to know first is what are the main components of the camera. So in terms of external hardware, the camera is comprised of body, which is going to protect the camera, especially the electronic hardware inside. So some of them are more resistant than others to, for example, rain, dust, or shocks. Then it has a lens, which can be a fixed focal length. So you have an angle which is fixed, angle of view, for example, 100 degrees fixed, you cannot move it, or varifocal. Then you will find in the market two kinds, manual focal. So you move it manually, which is not really convenient because once you have installed the camera, it's very complicated to change your installation. You need someone to go up there again and to modify it manually. Or the varifocal, which is motorized and remotely, you can control it remotely. So if you want to change the angle of view a bit later or adjust it perfectly. Then you have also very often on the camera a light sensor. It's for the camera to know what is the lighting in the environment. If it's day, the night, if it needs to switch to night mode, maybe to trigger the infrared lights to see in black and white. And also one of the main components you can find is a microphone. Many cameras have a built-in microphone. But also sometimes the possibility to add an external microphone if this one is not powerful enough or cannot get the sound from far enough. Then it has many connectors. Here, for example, it's a box camera. At the back of the camera, you will find a lot of different connectors. The main one you will find in all kinds of cameras on the market is RJ45 socket. Why? Because it's what we are going to use to transmit the data over the network through Ethernet. And it's also used a lot in every kind of installation for PoE. It means to send the power over the Ethernet cable to the camera, so we can do everything, power and data through one cable. To ensure that it's working correctly, you have always LEDs, LEDs, for example, here one red and one green, to give you information on the status about the power supply and the network connection. A camera will also often have a reset button. In case, for example, if you lost your password, you don't remember which one is it. Right now, due to the different cybersecurity issues we have nowadays, there is no password by default. So you have a dedicated button to reset the camera to factory default and to start again from scratch. And you can have also SD card slot if you want to record directly in the camera, or the IDO to interconnect the camera with other devices in the network, a door, an access control, etc. And also, of course, audio in-out if you want to connect a speaker or an external microphone, as mentioned previously. But you can have a lot more, like RS4, RS5, etc. Depends on the camera. And the last part is the internal components of the camera. Protected in the body, what you need to know is that there is first a sensor which is going to get the light. So from the lens, it gets the light, gets the image. Usually, it's important because it's the resolution number, so the number of pixels you may have on it will give you like the number of information you will get on your image. Then you have the system of chips, which is in fact a kind of little CPU which embed a firmware, a software, which is going to take care a bit of everything, like to get the image, to create a stream, to have the protocols communicating with everything on the network. And it is one which is going to be updated regularly to update the functionalities of the camera, to fix some bugs, etc. Then you have the network card to connect with the network, and also sometimes the LEDs, the same ones that we saw before, for some cameras where the LEDs are inside and not outside. So usually you have in the market a lot of resolution available. From CIF, for those who used before the analog cameras, it's a very low resolution, 352 by 288, up to 4K resolution. Currently on the IP camera market, what you will see the most often is 2 megapixel, 5 megapixel, and 4K. 2 and 5 are the main ones. Before, a few years ago, you had 3 and 4, but currently the 5 megapixel sensor are better with more megapixels and cheaper. So at the end right now, it's more 2 and 5 megapixels that you will see more often. So in terms of form factor, this is, say, the first step of choosing the cameras that we want. You need to know that there is different type of cameras, all with their advantage and inconvenience. Here we are going to talk about the main ones. The first one is a box type camera. This one of the first form factors of camera you could see on the market like a dozen of years ago. And the idea is that it's, so the body of the camera, as we just saw, with connectors and everything, which has a really nice advantage is that you can change the lens. If you have by default a 2.8 to 12 millimeter lens and you don't see enough far away, you want to see further, you want to see up to 100 millimeter with a 100 millimeter focal lens to zoom further, then you can just change the lens and use another one, and maybe you have 50 to 100 millimeter focal lens. So this is the main, let's say, the main reason to use this type of camera. It usually has all the thing you like, a good sensor. It has all the functionalities, but this is its main characteristics, and also a lot of connectors. However, as you can see, the connectors are on the back, so it means that if there is a little bit of rain, of water, or dust, is going inside the camera. So if you use this camera on indoor environment, it should be okay. But in outdoor environment, when there is condition like rain, which could impact the well-functioning of the camera, you usually have to add an outdoor enclosure, a housing to protect the camera, to heat it when it's too cold, and yes, to protect it against the environment. So that's the main drawback of this camera. And also, if you want to use night vision, you need to add additional infrared light. So this camera is mainly used usually in areas where you want to have maybe longer focal lengths, or for dedicated application like license plate recognition, like in highways. You want to see a camera from far away, which goes at 130 kilometers per hour. So you are going to use this camera to zoom further and get the best quality as you want, while this camera is protected in nothing. The second one on the right is a bullet type camera. So this camera is a bit the same, but all in one. It means that you have in the body of the camera everything. It's protected with metal housing, so against rain, against dust, against vandalism. It has heaters, it has varifocal lens, it has, as you can see on the front, there is different LEDs, so infrared light LEDs embedded. It's everything inside, and the most important thing, it has a sun shield. So you have, you can adjust it to not have any problem when you have backlight. For example, when the sun is going down, you have the sun in front of you, you don't want to get annoyed by it, so it protects you against backlight. However, it has also some drawbacks. First, it's easy to know where it's pointing. As you can see, you have like a main body and a fixation part. So when you turn it to see somewhere, everybody knows where it's pointing at. So that's the first problem. The second one is that the main part of the body is very resistant, where you have the lens and everything, but the part which is fixing it into the wall, for example, maybe it can move a bit through if there is a big shock. So someone using a baseball bat hitting the camera, maybe the camera will still be functioning well, but it will not be it will be misaligned. It will not be in the same direction. So you will still record videos, but not of what you want to see. So usually this type of camera installed higher, where it's difficult to access the camera. You have the third one, which is one of the most common one with the bullet, which is a fixed dome. The same, it's everything included inside, IR, motorized focal lens, everything. The advantage of this one is that it can have a smoke cover for some models, so you don't know where the camera is pointing, it's more discreet. And usually the size is smaller, which means that for some application where the size of the camera is very important, for example, retail shop, you have something which is much smaller, much discreet, And especially this kind of camera has two versions: indoor, outdoor. Outdoor, which is metal housing, and indoor, which is more like a plastic housing, which means that it can be even smaller. However, the main drawback is that it's a bubble, and the bubble don't have sun shield, so you are very sensible to backlights, for example, if you put it outside, and if you put it in a wall mount position, the rain and the dirt might just drop on the bubble, and you need to clean it regularly. On the right, another type of camera that you will see very often is a PTZ, so pan, tilt, zoom. It's a camera equipped with 3 different motors that you can command remotely, for example, to move right, left, top, bottom, or zoom. What is very different compared to the dome, for example, of the bullet, is that the dome and the bullet have varifocal lengths. It means that you can change the focal and the angle of view, but very slowly, and the focus takes some time. So usually you do it only once when you install, or if you want later to adjust a little bit your angle of view. Here, the idea is to do it anytime. So the focus is very fast, and you can zoom very far, up to 250 meters, for example, even with infrared light. Furthermore, you can program inside patrol, so presets. You zoom in a place, you wait a bit, you zoom in another place, you wait a bit in another place. Main drawbacks is that if you do this, when you are looking at the second patrol preset, for example, you're not looking at the first one. So if anything happened in the first one, at the first one when you are looking at the second one, then you recorded nothing. So you pay for a very expensive, very high-end camera, and you recorded nothing. So the idea is that this type of camera usually needs an operator, someone who will have a joystick and will be able to use it either to patrol or either to go to check some details in the image. So you can combine it, for example, with a camera on the left, where you have a large angle of view covering all the scene, plus this PTZ camera that someone can just control and send to check, for example, a license plate, the face of someone doing something maybe, I don't know, at the entrance of the parking. So to see more details. Other type of form factors that you will see in the market, much more different than the classical ones. The first one is a fisheye. The fisheye is a camera which is installed on the ceiling and gives you a 360 degrees view. The idea is to cover with one single camera everything in a large area. So of course you are on the ceiling, so you don't have so much information on, for example, the face of people or what is far away from the camera. You will have a high resolution at the center of the image, but not so much on the edges. So it's a camera which will be used mainly to monitor large area, or for example, to track people. It's an example of a shop, a small shop. You have, let's say, a dome camera at the entrance, like a fixed dome, looking at the entrance, looking at people entering, seeing them, looking at them, and then this camera will be used to track them in the shop. So you don't need to install 5 or 6 other fixed domes, just one fisheye camera to track them in the shop. So this is very convenient as it allows you with one camera to cover a large area, and the main advantage is to do it with only one cable, one installation, and also one license on some VMS. Also, it has the advantage to have what we call dewarping. It means that the VMS, for example, network Optix VMS, can use a 360 view and modify it to look like, for example, a normal view from a bullet, and move on it like a PTZ. So it's an image which has a lot of information and can be used in a lot of manner by the VMS. So the main drawback of this one is, of course, that, as I said, when you have, even if you have 12 million pixels in the image, you will have a lot of information at the center because you have much more things at this area. But however, when you are going to the edge, you are maybe going to have a lower resolution. And this camera, as I said, is not really so useful for identification. It's more for tracking, monitoring areas. On the right, different type of form factor, which is here 180 degrees. The idea is this one is wall mounted. So you put it on the wall and you get 180 degrees of a scene, a full view without dead angle. That's the main purpose of this camera. You put it, for example, on the entrance of a door, you have an access control. When someone bad, you want to be sure that this person to see his face and also to check if there is nobody around following him or with ill intentions. So then you install it as a height of people's face. You see the face even if there is a cap or anything, and because you have no dead angles, you see everything. If there is people under the camera, on the left, on the right, in front. So this is a very important thing. At the previous cameras, the bullet and the dome, they have all dead angles, which means that they see correctly what is in front of them, but what is under them, you cannot. So usually when you install a camera, you'd always need to have another one maybe in front of it to cover its dead angle. So you have like two cameras face to face to cover each other dead angle. For this one, you don't need. That's the main advantage. So you don't need to have other cameras to monitor this one and to be sure that nobody is trying to harm the camera, to vandalize it, or yes, there is no dead angle. However, for this one is one sensor, 5 megapixels. So for identification, if the subject is very close to the camera, it's possible. If it's far, it's a bit more complicated. You have this type of 180 degrees. As I said, the problem is the resolution for all the views that you are going to get. However, some cameras use more sensors. For example, this one is 2. You have also some cameras with 4 sensors, so up to 20 million pixels. And the idea is that you can cover 180 degrees with much more resolution. So this one, of course, is not the same, as they are more dedicated to building perimeters. You put it on the wall, very high, and you can see everything on the perimeter. But the idea is that you get 180 degrees with a high resolution and one single cable, one single installation, and one single license on the VMS side. However, maybe it can require dedicated VMS integration or support as the format of the image is a bit different than the usual 16:9. So maybe you need something special on the VMS side to support like an integration. For the 360s, this is the last one I want to highlight as let's say important form factors. The idea is that here, as you can see the pictures, you have 4 lenses in the camera. This one are all mounted on a rail, so you can move them. So the idea is that when you install the camera, with your hand, you move the different lenses where you want to see. So for example, in front of the camera, under the camera, on the left, on the right, and then you have a varifocal lens to adjust them remotely later. So for example, here it's 4 × 5 megapixels camera. So it means that one single camera with one single cable, one single port on your switch, and maybe one single license on the VMS, if this one integrates this camera, then you can have, in fact, 4 cameras in one. So it has this advantage, is that your installation is much more simple, and maybe the cost will be much more lower, as you need only to install one single camera. However, the drawback is, in fact, that if the camera has a problem, maybe like the 4 sensors have the problem too. Like you don't have any image. Like if, for example, I don't know, the power, there is no power anymore, the switch port is broken. But the idea is that the main advantage is that it allows you to have 4 cameras in one. And that's a very interesting form factor with a lot of utilities, especially in areas where it's difficult to install several cameras. For example, the corner of a building. You put it and you can cover everything with one single camera, and still with 20 megapixel resolution. So once you have chosen the right form factors, then you need to think about, okay, I know my resolution, I know my form factor, which camera model will I choose? Because for a form factor and a specific resolution, you have different series. At Vivotek, for example, we have 3 series. One commercial series, which is entry level, V series, like middle hand, and S series, which is high-end cameras. All of them have dedicated functionalities, like for example, higher hardware performances, more hardware connectors, or dedicated functionalities such as, I don't know, AI embedded. So the choice of the correct model will require you to know what is exactly the mission of your camera. Why are you going to install it at this area? An example for the 2 megapixel cameras from Vivotek, the fixed dome 2 megapixel outdoor, like for example this one. The 68, for example, you will have all the technologies from you may need: good low light, backlight compensation, good video compression. However, you will be limited. One PoE only as an input, so one RJ45 only, no DIDO. The iris will be fixed, so it's still working even in outdoor environment. But if you want a very deep depth of field, for example, do some analytics, maybe you would like to have a more high-end iris system. But then if you go to the middle hand, the V series, you will have more connectors, the IDO. Maybe also the possibility to power the camera with DC 12 volt, so much more choice. So here, for example, if you want to interconnect the camera with the door, the DIDO you can connect, have some contacts, and when the door opens, take a snapshot or this kind of thing. You can do some scenarios. And the S series, the more high-end one, then you will have much more powerful CPUs usually. So for example, up to 60 frames per second instead of 30. You will have maybe a better backlight compensation. And you might have dedicated analytics embedded, for example, people detection, intrusion detection, this kind of thing. But usually what you need to remember is that all these cameras have mainly the same image quality. Maybe not the high-end because they have a different sensor, but the other ones, they are mainly the same image quality and the same technologies inside. So the choice of which series you are going to use will be made depending of if you need connectors to connect the camera to, as we say, access control, doors and everything, or anything that you don't have on the C series. So you can have an installation with only C series camera, entry level, and maybe few V series with connectors that needs to be interconnected with other devices. So you can have a combination of both to optimize your budget while keeping a good quality of your installation. So once we have chosen the, let's say, the form factor, the resolution, and the series that we need, then we need to take care of the technology that we want to have in the camera. Usually you have three main things to take in account. The first one is the mechanical protection of the camera. As remember, the bullet cameras, for example, they have a metal protection. So the idea is that you can install them in outdoor environment. Usually in the datasheet, you will see three types of ratings. The first one is IP rating. You will see most of the time IP66 or IP67. It's a rating that allows the camera to protect the camera against dust and water, mainly. So the idea is like if you put your cameras under the rain, if it's well sealed, it's not going, the rain is not going to go into the camera and destroy the electronics part of the camera. Then you have the IK rating. This is against shocks, impacts. So the idea is that if someone hits the camera, it's still working. For a fixed dome camera, maybe the bubble might get some impacts, but you will still get the video from the camera. For a bullet camera, there you need to be careful. Bullet camera will still be working, but as we said, it's easy to misalign. So if it's misaligned, it's still working, but not recording what you wanted to record. So that's why, for example, a bullet camera needs to be a little bit higher to not be misaligned by someone on purpose. And the last one is a NEMA 4X. This one is a specific rating against salinity, air salinity. You see it very often on high-end cameras, especially on PTZ camera or speed domes. These cameras have motors inside. So if any salt, dust, or water gets inside the camera, is going to break everything, and you will have to change it. So this specific rating is here to protect your camera against this potential issue. So it can be used close to the ocean, of course, when you have a lot of salinity in the air, in cities where you have pollution, or in environment where you have, for example, dust or snow. Snow is also a problem sometimes. So these are the three main ratings to be careful about: the protection, mechanical protection of the camera. Then you have the technology which are linked to the image quality that you are going to get. The first one is the low light sensitivity. Your camera has a sensor which is usually very sensible. as human eyes, usually we say it's sensible to 1 lux. We'll see that in the datasheet, lux, LUX. Usually it means that it's a light emitted by a candle in a dark environment. So it's almost nothing, but it's what us, human, can see at best. A camera can go down to 0.01 lux, even more. So it means that the camera can see very clearly with colors, where us, we don't see anything. So it's very important for the camera to have this kind of technology. It's what we call SNV at Vivotek, which in fact is a sensor which can see very clearly in the dark, and also which will have not so many noise when it's very dark. Why? Because noise appear when you don't have so much light, usually but it's ugly on the image, of course, and it generates a lot of bandwidth, as when your camera wants to send information to your recorder, when it sees noise, it's going to think that the noise is an information. So more you have noise, more the camera believes that there is information in the image, more you send useless information, and more you record useless information, and more you use bandwidth. So it's important for a camera to have a good sensor to avoid all these problems. The second one is about backlight. It's what we call the wide dynamic range, or WDR. This technology is here to allow you to see clearly the areas which are overexposed, for example, if you have the sun or reflection of the sun in the image, and the area which are underexposed. It's combining 2 images with different exposure time together. So when you are in an outdoor environment with different reflections, for example, the sun on cars or darker areas, you will see everything clearly. In indoor environment, it's also very useful if you have windows which gives to the outside, as the outside is much brighter than the inside. Third one is more about night vision. During nighttime, your camera, many cameras have IR LEDs embedded, or external IR LEDs if you are using box cameras, for example. So when you are using infrared lights, the main problem is that if someone gets too close to the camera, as the camera is the source of the IR lights, then the subject gets all the lights and sends them back, reflects them back all to the camera. So it will look overexposed, like totally white in the image. And you don't want it because you have no details on this person. So then you need to adjust the IR LED power. But if you adjust it to see clearly the person in the foreground, then you don't see anything in the background anymore, because your background, there is not enough light and everything goes dark. So that's a smart IR technology. The idea, this video, is that when someone is going to get close to the camera, we see that the camera will adjust to get a clear image well exposed on the foreground and a very well exposed image on the background. You can still see Denis over here and all the, everything which is in the storage room. So it's very important to have it if you expect that you are going to have, for example, people getting close to the camera or anything happening in the image on the foreground and in the background, to ensure that the quality will be perfectly everywhere. So, other things to take in account, I mentioned it before for the low light, is the bandwidth management. Why? Because your camera is going to get image and create a video stream and send it over the network. And your network is always limited. You have always a limited bandwidth. If you use one camera, maybe it's not a problem. If you use 10, it starts to be 100, 1000. Remember the Samui project at the beginning is 1000 cameras. Your bandwidth is going to get a lot of video streams. So you need to manage as much as possible the compression of your video stream and the bandwidth that you used for different reasons. The first one is that more you use bandwidth, maybe you are going to saturate your network. If you do this, maybe you are going to lose packets, some frame, you are going to miss events. For example, you have an alarm and you miss the alarm, that's a big issue. The second one is that if you record all this information, you need a hard drive, you need recording space. And more hard drive means a bigger budget for your recording space, right? So if you can store the same amount of information, for example, 1 day of recording, but with 50% less bandwidth, it means also 50% less hard drive space needed, which is a budget twice lower. So this is a very important point, is that the bandwidth allow you not only to save on the network bandwidth for everything to go smoothly, but also to help you to manage well the recording space, especially for high resolution. As right now, we have cameras going up to 20 million pixels. So if you don't manage properly the bandwidth, you are going to get like your storing space needed will skyrocket and your budget too. So this usually is done by two things. The first one is the codec, the video codec. You have three in the market. The first one that you don't see so often, but it's always in the camera, which is the MJPEG. The idea is a very simple one. You take a frame, you compress, you send. You take a frame, you compress, you send. It takes a lot of bandwidth. It's say a bit basic. However, it's very stable. So for Wi-Fi connection, for example, environments which are not so stable, if you use MJPEG, you might not have any problem to get the video stream. Maybe you will lose some frame, but at the end, you will get as much information as possible from the camera. The two other ones are the most used in the market, the H.264 and the H.265, which is the newest generation of this codec. Them which are going to provide a much more efficient bandwidth management. So they are going to compress even more. So more you have an efficient video codec, more you manage correctly the bandwidth. So it's not so important for 2 megapixel cameras, for example, if you have only 1 or 2, but when you start to have a lot of cameras of very high resolution, if you save 50% of bandwidth, that's very important. The second one with the video codec is how the camera itself can manage the compression. In Vivotek, we call it the smart stream. The idea is that it's an edge analytic tool in the camera. The camera will look at the scene, detect what is moving and what is not, and assign a different compression to the object. So if it's moving, we change nothing. We get as much details as possible. If it's not moving, it's a background. Here's the road. It's not so important. We are going to compress it a little bit. Visually, you will not see the difference. However, you will save 20–25% of bandwidth. So it's very important things. And the best is that it's done by the camera on edge, so it's totally transparent for any VMS. So you don't need any special integration for like reading the videos after or anything. This is done by the camera itself. And the last part of the technologies that I want to cover today is the edge technologies. As right now, since few years, you saw resolution getting higher and higher. We went from 1 megapixel to 2 to 5 to 4K. And right now the cameras are very powerful. And they have CPUs which are powerful enough to manage this kind of resolution, even 20 megapixel resolution, which means that this CPU, which gets more and more powerful, have more processing power. And we can use them to do more things than just manage a video stream or the camera main and basic functionalities. So nowadays, due to this evolution of the technologies, we can put analytics in the camera, image analytics, which means that the camera can do, for example, motion detection, detection of a person, of a dog, vehicle, smoke detection, or this kind of thing directly in the camera, depending, of course, of how powerful the camera is. The main advantage of this technology is that you don't need any server behind. Usually before, you had to have a dedicated server for recording and another server to make the image processing, the image analytics. So here, it's not the case anymore. And it has two main impacts. The first one is this server, you don't need it anymore. So you don't need to pay for this server, for the hardware, for the maintenance, for the licenses and everything. This is done at the camera, maybe with a license on the camera. So you are not limited anymore by the server hardware, because if this analytics server could only take care of 20 cameras and you want to install 21, 22, like 2 others later, then maybe you cannot add them anymore. You need to redimension your server or add another server. Here, the idea is that if you want to add another camera with a new analytics, is done by the camera itself. Or if you want to add analytics in 6 months, you can do it also. It's kind of scalable. However, remember that because this is done by the camera, it's limited by the CPU of the camera, and CPU of the camera are not as strong as CPU of a PC, of course. So your performances might be enough for what you want, but maybe in some case, you still need a server to get like a dedicated analytics, which is very complex. For example, fire starting. to recognize when a fire is starting. But this is like the trend right now in the market, is cameras getting more and more powerful and more functionalities inside. And this is done because algorithms are trained. We use more and more, especially in Vivotek, deep learning. It means that we have AI analytics which are trained with image and videos more and more, for example, to detect people from objects. So if you have a motion detection in the past, you have rain, you have a spider, you have a dog, you get a false alarm. And that was very annoying. So in the indoor environment, no problem. In outdoor environments, that was a mess. However, right now, the cameras are able to make the difference, to calibrate correctly, to have analytics which are trained for it, and you can have very accurate and effective image analysis in outdoor environments, even with all the problem of lights, of rain and everything, or birds, or whatever. So it's very, very accurate nowadays. In Vivotek, that's what we call the smart VCA. So you see, for example, here, that's what you will find in many cameras in the market. You have a suite of analytic tools that you can put in the camera. Here with AI, so for example, to recognize people from objects and to perform line crossing detection, intrusion detection, or phase detection, or an object in the scene which is not tended, like it's blocking a door, it should not be there. You can have a dedicated detection to this. So cameras are getting more and more powerful and more useful. Here is an example. You have a line on the ground which for intrusion detection, and the idea is to have intrusion detection for humans. So here you have a dog, which is I think it's Lara, who is coming in the image. So you see the pixels moving, it means there is motion, but the camera recognizes it's not a human, so no detection. However, with Steve is coming, you have a blue cube around him, which in fact detect him as a person, which was not the case of the dog. And when the feet enter the area, the detection is triggered. So the camera can filter very efficiently between different objects, animals, people. This has also another application, which is a people counting technology. The same, we put technology inside the camera. This one is very special. It's a camera with two lenses, like human eyes, so it's in 3D. So you install it on the ceiling, and when people are getting under the camera, it's getting a 3D view of the image, as it can detect distances. So when someone gets under, you see the shape of the person, recognize the shoulders, the head, the height, and you can ensure that you are counting a human, not baby cart, not, I don't know, a bag or a luggage. This is very important, as it allows you to have accurate counting for customers who need this kind of information. For example, retailers, they want to count their customers, they want to have the transformation rate, especially if they do promotions for specific products, or shopping mall. You have, for example, museums, especially in the current situation, what we have right now with COVID-19, where the number of people in the same space is limited. They can put cameras at the entrance and the exit, synchronize them, and they know exactly at a time how many people there is inside. So if you have too much people, you raise an alarm, the security agents stop people from entering, and you wait people to leave to let others enter again. Our third application is security area, for example, banks, data centers, where you want to ensure that there is not more than a certain number of people. For example, not more than 5 people. And this with a access control is very important. Someone badge wants to enter, you count how many people enters. If, for example, the guy is alone, you let him enter, no problem. If there is someone doing tailgating, following him, so one badge for 2 people, you can raise an alarm. And you get statistics and everything on the cloud or reports and everything. So this is an application of this AI technology that you can have and has very realistic applications that we see every day. Then a little glimpse of what we are going to see in the future. Here, so now you know a bit now how to choose the camera. What is the difference between the different form factors? What kind of technology you need to be careful about? And also that analytics is very important on the cameras, and that there is possibility to add analytics in them. So in the future of this video surveillance market, there is three things that we believe will be crucial. The first one is cybersecurity. Nowadays, people are raising more and more awareness relating to the cybersecurity. You see articles about products backdoors, hacking issue. Recently, we got schools where people were able to hack the cameras and put the streams everywhere. So it's problematic for private life, but also for companies or government installations, which is sensitive installation like banks, army, government buildings, where you don't want anyone to access your cameras, right? And governments such as the American government issued recently a bill, which is the NDAA, that you might see already in the USA and in the UK, which in fact restricts the choice of camera manufacturers to trusted ones only. So it bans specific manufacturer, which was, for example, having this kind of issue of hacking or backdoors. So it's something which we see more and more. And to answer to these questions, two things are currently on the market and which are going surely to be more and more democratized. The first one is the cybersecurity inside the product, inside the camera. At Vivotek, we co-work with a company named Trend Micro, which is a Japanese company doing antivirus. And the idea behind this is to put the antivirus into the camera or the NVR. So the camera or the NVR are protected. They sort and they filter each packet which is entering or leaving. If the camera is contaminated, it can raise an alarm. If it finds someone trying to break the camera with like 1,000 password, it can also find it and raise an alarm and set it to the VMS, which can get this alarm and maybe react to it or send an information to the security agent. So the products are protected by antivirus, embedded antivirus. The second one is that you need to check as a commitment of the manufacturer. As a product, to be sure that it's safe, the manufacturer needs to follow some procedure and some rules. For example, at Vivotek, we follow OWASP, which is a guideline for the industry, for devices, mobile or website, to be sure that your code follows some specific security advices. And also we made them test our products by two advisors, which are onward security and DevCore, for two kinds of tests, which are white box testing and black box testing. So testing while we know everything about the camera and testing when they don't know anything about the product. For example, DevCore is a Taiwanese company, also working with Facebook, Apple, Yahoo for testing also their products. So these two things, the commitment of the manufacturer and the fact to have a product which is safe, which has an additional safe layer, because you can have also an antivirus still in the network, makes that you can answer these recent concerns for customer, to who this matters, for example, banks or government installation. So this is, yes, an important topic which is raising more and more concerns. Then you have the NVIF. Our NVIF is here on the market since a lot of time, maybe 20 years. And NVIF is a standardization. It's a group, so in which Vivotek and NX are both members. So it's a group where people, manufacturers, end users, distributors are going to discuss specifications to have all devices be able to communicate with each other. So you can have a camera from Vivotek, for example, on an AVR from another brand, and a VMS from Network Optix, and all of them, just because they implement and they follow this standard, they will be able to discuss with each other and to work together. And you can have also access control, door opening system, because this standards, in fact, it's a standard made with profiles, depending on what kind of device you want to control, and with specifications, technical specifications. So it says, for example, if you want to get a stream, you need to send the stream in a specific way and to receive it in a specific way, which means that two systems can co-work together just because they are following this, and this allows you to have a lot of choice in which devices you want to use, and also if you want later to add new products or to maybe add access control to your solution. The last one, or last slide, which is something I want to talk about, is the Open Security and Safety Alliance. This is a new, still very young alliance, a group, a bit like the NVIF I just introduced before, but this one is very dedicated to analytics, edge analytics. The idea is to have products which will embed an Android operating system. And as every Android devices, such as your mobile phone, you will have a dedicated app store. So you will be able to download, for example, a smoke detection application, put it in the camera, and turn your camera in a smoke detection device. So that's something very important. It means that as the product gets more and more powerful, later on you will be able to buy, for example, a camera from Vivotek and add a specific analytic software from another company who put it in the store. And that gives you a lot of flexibility in how you want to use the camera and your choice of analytics for the camera. So for example, you install a camera and 2 years later you want to add, I don't know, we say fire detection because you have a need, you can just download it, you pay the license, download it, install it in the camera, and your camera now has this analytics embedded, if it works, of course, on the is operated by Android operating system. So this is something that we believe will rise in the next years, as it will provide more flexibility and more choice for the integrators and the customers who wants to use edge image analytics. So to conclude, what you just saw in this webinar is really the fact to how to choose really the form factor, to know its strengths, its weakness, that you have different choices, that maybe you can use a bullet, but maybe 180 degrees that's instead, because there is no dead angle and you don't want to install a second camera looking at this one, or because 180 degrees is exactly what you need, or maybe you need 4 cameras in one, so you have a multi-adjustable sensor type of form factor. And then you saw also that the choice of the camera is not only through the form factor, but then through the resolution, through the technologies of this camera. So if it's indoor, outdoor, resistant to rain or not, if it has technology for the image quality, for backlight, and also that some of the cameras may have more choice in terms of connectors than others. So the choice of the camera is really depends on the mission of the camera, what you want to do with it. And sometimes you can have an installation with a low-end camera, like the entry series cameras, the commercial series. But for dedicated application, you might need to go for higher end to get the connectors to interact with other device, to get the edge analytics system, while keeping for all the camera a very good image quality. So yeah, that's something you need to remember, is this process to choose the right camera, and that all of them have their strengths, and that there is different series for a reason, is usually more for maybe the processing power of the camera, or the connectors it has for interacting with other devices. Okay, and yeah, so to conclude this webinar, we will have a Q&A session. So if you have any question about the information which were in the slide, if anything was not so clear, or if you have a question about your installation of what you use right now, don't hesitate. We are here to answer to it. If it's about Vivotek or NX, don't hesitate. We're both here to answer to your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Maxime, for that. That was a really good presentation. I think it's good for, like, even if you're already well versed in kind of the cameras, just to even get a refresher on it. There's some good information that I learned. Like the fact that the image process, especially for you guys, like you were saying, the image quality for each of the lines is actually the same. It's just dependent, like additional kind of AI and connectors for the camera, not actually the quality of the image, which I think is good, right? It means that you're not trying to sell a inferior product by making bad quality images. So that was interesting because I've always been under the impression that the more expensive camera, the better the image quality, but it's more to do with the sort of chipset, the AI that can. So a couple of questions that we had come in was like OSSA. What's the Vivotek strategy for that? So are you guys looking at implementing it in the future? What's the kind of the Vivotek strategy for that?
Yes, alors Vivotek is is a member, a founder member of the OSSA. Our previous, to tell you, our previous CEO is now part of the board. I think he's vice president of the OSSA. So we are very involved in this group. For example, right now we are already starting to have products with this with the Android OS inside, starting with FixDome, maybe Fisheye. So more and more products will surely come with these options. As the store is, as I said, very new. It's a very young let's say system technology. So it's going to grow more and more. And for us, it's a very important thing as it allows our camera to use our own analytics, of course, but in some dedicated project, or else to have also the possibility to be more flexible. If the customer, for example, I say want to have smoke detection, it's maybe something we don't do ourselves right now, but he can still use our camera with this one. So it's we are very involved on this one. As I say, we are part of this of the group, and I say products will come more and more. We have so cameras or specific product maybe to add this analytics option to all cameras which are not under Android OS. So this is coming. This is this is our just starting, but as I say, for us it's a very important let's say trend. And it's something important for the future generations of cameras.
Yeah, cool. So you were saying earlier that obviously, although it's based on the new OSSA kind of platform, it still uses ONVIF as the communication protocol, right? Now that ONVIF, as you were saying, has a new profile, it could be even better for like transferring and communicating the AI from the OSSA platform, right?
Yes, indeed. The fact that the camera will use the OSSA, for example, the Android system, doesn't mean that it will stop to be working with other devices on the network. Because, how to say, the ONVIF is going to manage, for example, sending the stream, to set some parameters of the cameras, for example, from the VMS. And the OSSA is more something which is dedicated to the AI. It's two different groups, but some members of the OSSA are also members of the ONVIF. So both of them will be evolving, and I believe they will be evolving together. As you say, the ONVIF is also evolving, it's getting new profiles. Currently, you can all see on the ONVIF website, they are discussing the ONVIF profile M, which is dedicated to metadata, which means data from image analytics softwares embedded in the camera. For example, I detect a dog, I detect a human or a car at this place at that time. So the idea is like later on, what we could have is an ONVIF camera using the OSSA to process some analytics, getting some metadata, and using ONVIF to send the metadata to the VMS, which can record them, synchronize them with the recording, maybe use them to do some research in the recording or some alarms. So they are like more complementary of each other.
Cool. No, that makes sense. No, it's one of the reasons that we like, obviously, Vivotek as a partner. Some of the things you touched on are kind of our core principles as well. Like you were talking about the security side of things. you guys do something similar to us, where we actually get an independent kind of organization to do a security audit of the software as well, to make sure that it is secure. Like gone are the days, as I said before, of using admin for a password, right? Security is a lot more at the forefront now, to make sure that these systems are truly secure and there's no potential hacks and a lot of the stuff that's come out, like systems that have been exploited. So, to the point, even in NX, we have the ability to encrypt all the video streams if it's needed for like extra secure environment. And then also, like you were saying, just the in-camera analytics. We've already obviously done the integration with you guys on your in-camera analytics, but it's something that we're really pushing as well, because like you touched on, the fact that you guys are designing a system on chip that has the ability to handle all the analytics for that camera feed and all the AI. So you don't have to go and spec hardware. You don't have to then potentially run into issues where you're running too many AI algorithms for the chip that it's on. I mean, it's a lot more stable when it's run on the edge of the camera. So that's why we really like the push of getting kind of a lot more camera brands integrated, and obviously Vivotek being one of our main partners, to make sure that it just creates much more stability in the system. It's all managed from inside of a single interface. For instance, for us on the NX side, and I think that's we've got some well-aligned strategies between Vivotek and NX. So hopefully we just only increase from now on. But cool. If anyone's got any other questions, feel free to ask away. If you don't want to ask any here, like I've had some few people message me asking questions, feel free to email myself, jcox@networkoptix.com, or Maxim. Feel free to drop your email in chat, Maxim, for anyone to copy if they want it.
Yes.
I will do the same, and then
Here it is.
in there. And then if you can just jump to that last slide for me, if you added it, if you get a chance. I don't know if you had a chance to.
Here it is.
Yeah. Cool. So if anyone's interested about the upcoming days, we have an understanding surveillance hardware day coming up with one of our partners actually out of the Netherlands. They do a lot of custom builds for hardware, so they're kind of Dell partners and like that. So they're going to run through the speccing hardware for systems. We have the strategic approach to store it, to the surveillance storage side of things, which will be run by Seagate. So they'll be talking about kind of comparisons of hard drives and what's the difference between your Seagate or your kind of security drives versus a standard data drive, and then kind of talking about centralized storage versus distributed, things like that. The evolution of video analytics, one I'm actually personally looking quite forward to. We have a doctor of computer science actually running that one for us. He's going to go through the whole thing of like what AI is, where it came from, and how it's evolved, and actually giving you a better understanding of what an inference engine is and how the business logic's applied. Kind of gives, a lot of people can throw around buzzwords like deep learning, machine vision, but that's the idea is he's going to give us a really good insight to the world of AI. And then we're going to finish it up by basically combining the 4 days into a full designing a modern IP video surveillance system, which will be hosted by me. So I'll be running through how we kind of spec and quote, or not quote, but spec and design our systems to make sure that data rates are good, throughputs are fine, storage, calculations, architectures, networking, just running through a general overview, some of the tools that at least we have and that you want to look out for that manufacturers have to help you along with the design to figure out your data rates and everything. So on that note, I will thank Maxim for this morning's session and this afternoon session. I think the really good presentation you put together. We'll be putting them on YouTube as well, and we'll probably host them on a section of our site for educational videos, because I think it's a really good educational video to watch to understand IP cameras. So thanks everyone for coming. Like I said, feel free to reach out to us at any point. Maxim, feel free to wrap up any last things you want to make comments on.
I think that's mainly it. That's maybe just a quick word to say that remember cameras is part of a system, and with NX we have a good co-working together, and you integrate also a lot of the technologies from Vivotek, you said before, for the alarm, from the analytics, also the fish ID warping. So yeah, this is the last the last word for this presentation.
It's good. It was promoting me, so I'm happy with it. All right, perfect. All right, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks again, Maxim. Really good presentation. Really enjoyed it. All right.
So thank you everyone.
Bye bye.
Okay, goodbye.